a credit union is run by volunteers, that we have a volunteer board of directors, where a bank has corporators and trustees. If you have a $5 member account, then you are basically an owner of the credit union. You have a right to vote at meetings and so on and so forth. Whereas a bank, you're just a customer. So you actually take ownership of the credit union by becoming a member of the credit union.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on the agenda tonight is student reports. Do we have any student reports? If you come to the mic, please.
Hi and good evening. My name is Alicia Fagarski and I am a sophomore at Prouty. On September 2nd, a meeting was held for all athletes and their parents to go over the rules and regulations of the various sports offered. On September 4th, pictures were held for all grade levels. Today was the retake day. On September 11th, David Prouty observed the tragic events that took place on this day and honored those who lost their lives. On September 12th, a meeting was held for all sophomores. This was an informational meeting discussing class rings. The PSAT exam will be held on Wednesday, October 15th. This is a preliminary exam of the SAT and is a great way to practice for the exam. This is open to all sophomores and juniors. The fee is $17. Juniors who receive a free or reduced lunch will receive a free waiver. The last day to sign up is September 26th. Seniors' $40 yearbook deposit is due on Wednesday, September 24th. Their senior picture, baby picture, superlative ballot is all due on Friday, September 26th. Any junior or senior who is just not sure what career path to follow can take the ASVAB test on Tuesday, September 30th. The test will be administered in the library during blocks 1 and 2. Students are encouraged to participate in this valuable career exploration program. The ASVAB is the most widely used aptitude assessment program in the American schools today. Students interested in the AccuPlacer testing will have to go see Ms. Ford. Forms must be in by the end of the week. October 4th is drive-in movie night at David Prouty. This will be held in the back parking lot. This event is put on by Student Council. The cost is $5 for a ticket. Concessions will also be available. You can come and get your spot at 6:30. The movie will start at 7. In sports news, Prouty won their home season opener against Burncoat. The final score was 29-6. Also in last week, the marching band performed in the parade at the Big E. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other student reports? No? Okay. Next item, hearing for visitors. Any visitors wish to be heard? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on. Secretary's report. Members have in their packet minutes of the meeting of September 9th. If there's no corrections or deletions, motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Cludier. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Mr. Nordquist. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, so voted. Next item, financial report. The superintendent has no report from him or the business manager coming tonight, which will move us to unfinished business. Curriculum update. Mr. Superintendent?
Just to remind the committee that we continue our work with DSAC of the Department of Education. We actually had the team out last week to meet with the administrative leadership team and continue with our accelerated improvement plan. The good news is we are making progress on that particular task, which will be continuing throughout the school year. But the work is a little more involved now because last year when we started our curriculum maps and completed them at the end of the year, they were reviewed by the DSAC team. And there are a number of issues that have to be addressed. Some of the staff were able to complete them with a good deal of thoroughness. Other individuals still need some work, so it's a work in progress. Be that as it may, DSAC will continue their work with us throughout the district, and specifically to deal with the curriculum mapping to get that fine-tuned. But we're going to be taking the next step relative to outlining the various areas within the curriculum maps and align them with the Common Core standards. And that's probably a larger task for us to work on this year. And again, we're going to primarily emphasize English language arts and mathematics, but not only through the assistance of the DSAC team, but lo and behold, our new principal at Lake Street School, Joanna Bawalik, has a good deal of experience in this arena, having done it most recently in the Fitchburg Public Schools, and then prior to that in her coaching experience of principals, and certainly when she was a principal in the Worcester Public Schools. So at a following meeting, I've asked Joanna and the leadership team to come forward, and we'll have a separate presentation so that you can actually see what we're talking about. What does a curriculum map look like? What do the Common Core standards look like? And how we set that up, and that's really going to be our major task this year. That coupled with, as we move forward, and it's unfortunate that the teachers walked out of this information, because as we move forward, not only the curriculum mapping, but the alignment with the Common Core standards will feed into the new evaluation tool. And in that evaluation tool, there are, correct me if I'm wrong, my colleagues, I believe there are 4 standards that we'll be looking at all professional staff and all staff, meaning administration as well, of how we're progressing within those 4 standards. So we now start to connect the dots, and I hope that the staff does not lose sight of that, because they're the most important ingredient in that link. And as I've said on a number of previous occasions, it's not just the teaching component, it's more of the learning component that we shift to, of what students are actually learning. We'll talk a little bit tonight about what the most recent MCAS scores are, and we are showing some signs of progress, but that's all related to what are the students learning, not just what is happening in the classroom relative to the teaching by the professional staff. So things are starting to make sense, and the deeper we get involved in this, the more fine-tuning will have to take place, the ultimate goal being that there's coordination and articulation within grades, within disciplines, and between grades and between those disciplines. So as I said well over a year ago, don't let anyone fool you. This is not just a task to keep people busy. This, we believe, is our blueprint for eventual success to get us beyond the level 3 status. So with that, we do have additional dates. The DSAC will be coming out, and I'll just tick these off because there's a variety of activities between professional development, training that they will provide, as well as working with individual schools. But they'll be coming out on October 9, October 20, November 12, November 20, November 21, November 24, and specifically on curriculum mapping, they'll be out November 18, February 10, and March 17. So you count those up, that's a lot of help we're getting from the expertise of the Department of Education. We couldn't do it on our own, as I've said before, but with their assistance, including their people assistance for the resources and the skills that they have, also providing financial help to us so that we can continue our path to improvement. So I want to give a shout out to the administrative staff, give a shout out to the staff that will be involved in this, that the rubber really meets the road this year, and certainly a shout out to the Department of Education for providing such excellent services to us.
Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent in regards to that report? Okay, next item, superintendent search update. Since our last meeting, the superintendent search committee held their final meeting on Monday, October 15th. And the following day, the chair of that committee, Mr. O'Connor, submitted a letter to this chair recommending the names of 3 semifinalists to be interviewed to further the process. At this time, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the committee and all the residents of Spencer and East Brookfield, the members who worked deliberately under a very tight time frame to get this done. They were Amanda Lambert, Tracy Jeffries, Angela Napkin, Kurt Nodquist, Michelle Grant, Julie Supernant, and the chair, Charlie O'Connor. Also, I'd like to give a special thanks to Martha Berthium, who is our secretary and came forward and was willing to serve as confidential secretary to the search committee and help them with all the mundane things that had to be done throughout the process. So thanks to you also, Martha. Given the fact that the subcommittee has now done what they were charged to do by the committee, it may be in order to have a motion to disband the search committee unless members have other thoughts.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Cludier.
I'll make a motion to disband the subcommittee, send a letter of thanks to each member with our gratitude for serving.
Is there a second? Second, Mr. Chairman. Seconded by Mr. Nodquist. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. The second part of this, after I received the names, the process called for the chair to contact the 3 semifinalists to get permission from them to make their names public at tonight's meeting. Initially, folks were on board. As of Saturday night around 8:30, I received a call from one of the candidates who informed me that she chose not to go forward any further in the process. So that leaves me tonight with announcing the 2 semifinalists, Nadine Tracy Crow, Deputy Superintendent from Pittsfield, Mass., and Michael A. Bonaconti, Superintendent of Mohawk Regional School in the western part of the state. Those 2 have confirmed that they wish to go forward in the process and gave permission for their names to be presented to us tonight. The question at this point is, what direction does the board wish to go in? Is it the intent of the board to continue with the 2 people that have been submitted, or does the board have other thoughts or other ideas as to what they would like to do?
Mr. Chairman,
Cludier.
we, I believe, as a committee, had tasked the subcommittee with giving us anywhere from a minimum of 3 names to a maximum of 5 names to move forward. They could have given us, I don't even know what the pool of candidates was, I wasn't on, and I don't need to know. But the simple fact is, they could have given us 5 if they felt they wanted to give us 5. They gave us 3, certainly did their job. Unfortunately, it's down to 2. These things do happen, and that's why you ask for multiple candidates when you bring up the finalists. And I say we move forward with the 2 candidates that are before us.
Any other comments from any members?
I would agree, we just move forward with the 2 we have.
Okay, is that your second?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Cludier, seconded by Mr. King. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. The next issue that we need to discuss is the time frame for interviews. I think most members have expressed to me that they would like to get this done sooner than later. I would suggest to members that since most people have already boxed out Tuesdays on their calendar for school committee meetings, if that works for everybody else, then perhaps we should start setting some dates on the earliest Tuesday that works for everybody, contingent upon me contacting those candidates and them being available. What's your thoughts on that, or does anyone have a better suggestion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be okay with Tuesdays. I can't do it until Tuesday the 7th. I'm speaking at a conference next week,
Okay.
so I could do it another day that week, but if you want to stick with Tuesdays the 7th as The first available I have.
Tuesday's fine with the rest of the board? Okay. Perhaps in the next day or so, everybody could just drop me an email as to the Tuesdays that you're available for the month of October, and I'll pick the ones that all 7 members can be available for, and then I'll contact the 2 semifinalists and get something set up. In preparation for that, and these are things that we have to discuss in open session, what's the process that the board would care to follow from this point? I would make you aware of, I've been instructed by school council that as far as questions that members are going to come up with, that his suggestion is that we should collaborate on what we submit for questions, and then they need to be submitted to him for review to make sure that we don't violate any employment laws with questions that may be asked by committee members, and to eliminate the opportunity of members asking the same questions that someone else had asked, and may help us get a broader view of the people that we're interviewing. But short of that on the questions, what is the process that the board would like to engage in? Obviously, there'll be open interviews and stuff. We had mentioned at one point whether or not we wanted to have any input from the public or any questions asked from the public. Would you be interested in doing that with semifinalists, or would you rather wait until there was actually a finalist for the position if someone checked it? I'd just like some thoughts from everybody. Mr. Nordquist.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that as a board, we should interview and get down to finalists before we open to public to asking questions. We've gone this far. I was on the search committee, and you get it down to the finalists and then open it for the public for any questions. But if you're going to start with the public on the semifinalists, it could be a long, drawn-out night and affair, and so I just think if we get down to finalists, the person who we end up picking, I think that's the time to, after we ask the questions, to ask the public if they had any questions.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. Anyone else have any thoughts or ideas? Mr. Cludier?
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I guess my only thought is that I think we're at the finalists. There's 2
Only 2.
candidates that are before us, and I think that we ought to open it up to a complete, open, and public process, and certainly have questions be, there's 2 candidates that we're going to either choose from or choose none.
Yep.
So I think we ought to do it with both. My thought would be is that, some sort of if we have some sort of a meet and greet prior to a public interview, have our public interview followed up by questions from the audience, and I'm not sure that meets the legal, I'm not sure about the legalities of that, so I guess you'd have to vet that.
Yep.
Unless Dr. Malvey has some input on that.
Well, it's, excuse me, it's not illegal. Many places do that prior to the formal interview. On the flip side, many places, more so than the meet and greet piece, but more so, committees will conduct a formal interview, and then when they're finished with their questions and obviously any other points that the candidates want to make, then they can open it up on the floor for some questions. You don't want to go on interminably on it, but that's more the standard than the other, but it's certainly legal. There's nothing wrong. And the fact that the public may be asking some things that may be out of their realm, so to speak, that's not necessarily illegal, because they're not acting as an agent of the school committee. They're simply doing it as a interested citizen. So I don't think that there'd be any violation. And the candidates can simply say very politely, you're treading in an area that I can't get into. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, could we consider potentially asking for questions ahead of time? To work off a list from the public versus having people get
Yeah,
up?
I would be happy, as a person that got my chance to ask my questions, to maybe take my turns as public questions, and we could, ask people to maybe email us those questions, and then I'd be happy to present a list of things that I feel are would be particularly appropriate for these candidates?
Yeah, I tend to agree that that may be a better way in the process, is to allow citizens to submit questions to us that would come to the chair that I can review before they were asked from the table, but at least we would get the feel and the thoughts of what people in the community in both towns are thinking about. So if we decide that we want to go that route, what we need to look at is the timeframes. If we're going to have a meet and greet, and I think that's a great idea, and then you're going to do an interview and then allow questions that are coming in written in addition to questions that are going to be asked by members, we probably aren't going to be able to get 2 done in one night. Chances are, unless we start at 5 o'clock or something like that, which I have no problem with, but that's up to the board.
And I think you're correct. I think we have to think about maybe 1 a night. But I really wouldn't want to wait another week for another Tuesday, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
If we could possibly work our schedules. I know we're all busy people, and I know everybody's got things with their families and whatnot, but if we could grab 2 nights in 1 week and we make this happen. I think the meet and greet's kind of important. I think that staff could speak with the candidates prior to their interview. Maybe we have some refreshments, bottled water, maybe some soft drinks, cookies, or whatever the case might be, and just in an informal environment, wherever it might be, the cafeteria or whatever, just be able to meet and mingle and whatnot. Those staff members that choose to do such. Certainly, I think then the formal questions. Now, if I heard you correct, Mr. Chairman, our questions, we have to formulate our questions in public session?
Yes, according to school counsel, he informed me today that we have to do our, not our questions, but our process.
Our process?
Our process.
Okay.
Our questions have to go to school counsel.
Oh, that's fine. I have no problem. I just don't want to sit here and say, geez, these are the 10 questions I'd like to ask the candidates and allow the candidates to,
Right.
get prepped on it.
Right, yeah. Basically, the chair would be looking for the questions from every member, and I will follow them.
Okay,
up to
fine.
Our council.
That's fine.
And he'll make any additions or deletions or whatever to the questions that's asked, and then we'll move on from there. But at least they'll be cleared by council first, so that we're not in any violation of any employment laws that we may or may not be aware of.
As far as the public emailing, I have no problem. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's logistics. They will have a say in it. They will be able to ask the questions they want. They may have to email them to us ahead of time. That's fine. I have no problem with that, if that's the will of the board. And maybe that is a better way, so that there's no inappropriate questions. Not that the communities would do that. I'm just saying that, it's probably just a...
So perhaps the chair should amend my request to the members, and that maybe you should forward to me the dates that you're available for 2 nights in 1 week, so that if Tuesday is one of them, and then try to give me a few options to pick from, so that I can try to put together an interview on Tuesday and Wednesday, or Tuesday and Thursday. I think Friday's probably out of the question. Monday would be okay as well, if folks Monday and Tuesday. But if you can get that stuff to me in the next couple of days, then I can move forward to get things set up with the finalists.
Is our objective the first 2 weeks, 2 full weeks of October? Is that really our objective?
What's the pleasure of the board?
Yes.
Yes, you'd rather get this done?
We just gotta do some
quickly as
rearranging with our
possible?
kids, but.
Yeah, I guess that we would be looking,
Okay.
Using the Tuesday of the first night meeting in October as your interviews.
yeah, that's a good suggestion the superintendent just brought up, is we have a meeting the first Tuesday of October. We could put nothing else on that agenda, or if we started a few minutes early and then use that meeting as one of our interview nights, then that would cut down on one less night that members would have to be out. So that's a thought as well. So keep that in mind when you forward the dates to me. Another thought that came to mind, because I know that there was some criticism about it in the process in the past, how does the board feel about site visits? Is the board interested in going for site visits on these 2 candidates? Do you want to have a committee go, or does every member want to go themselves? So what's the pleasure of the board? Any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Napton?
I feel that we should have site visits, and I don't think it should be individual visits, so I think we need to decide who's going to go, and they should go as a team to those visits.
Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Nordquist?
Yeah, I would say we should have a site visit and somehow of a background check, which I suppose we have to ask our school lawyer of how you're going to do our background checks, but definitely, they both should be done. I was involved with the first one, and we didn't do any site visits. We took things for granted, so definitely, I would like to do a site visit.
Okay. The background check is another item that will be taken care of further on in the process, and that is something that will be, if it's the board's pleasure, hired out to do by a professional firm. But let's get back to the issue of site visits. I need some direction from the board. Do you want a subcommittee to go and do site visits, or do members want to go to the communities and team up themselves with another member and go on their own? What's the feeling of the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Nyquist?
I would say that we should have a subcommittee of 3 or 4. I don't have a problem with all of us going, but I know other people got jobs, so we should have at least 3 go, and the more the better. If somebody goes, if I go and Mrs. Knapp goes, or somebody else on the board goes, we might have different questions to ask people, so I think the more heads, the better.
Okay. So in light of that, is there a motion to have a subcommittee to do the site visits?
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Nyquist. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Napton. Now the most important question, who wants to go?
Mr. Chairman, I'll volunteer.
Who was the subcommittee? You two and who else?
You haven't actually.
We're asking for members now.
No, I was just wondering who was on the search committee,
Oh.
just for continuity.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Nordquist and Ms. Napkin were the members of the search committee.
Okay.
So perhaps it should be other members that weren't on the search committee to go.
I would think for continuity, it'd be best that they go.
You
I mean,
think
in my
that they-
opinion, all we have is this to go by. They've had interviews and other things, so.
Okay, well, I'm open to the pleasure of the board, so somebody make a motion and we'll take a vote and see how it goes. Mr. King is suggesting that he thinks it should be the 2 members that were on the search committee because they've been more involved in the process and maybe better equipped to ask, but we'll decide this by motions and votes, so,
Mr. Chairman, I would like to go to those
okay,
site visits.
all right?
Now, if we're going to do them collectively, that's fine with me. If we're going to do them individually, that's fine. It doesn't matter to me. But I certainly want to, this is kind of probably the most important decision that this board will make, and I want to do my due diligence
Okay.
for my vote.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I would like to go also. I just need to get permission from my building principal.
Okay. Anyone else feel strongly about they want to be present to go for site interviews?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to go myself.
Okay, Mr. Perhaps the best thing would be to just have everybody go and team up and whether we set it on 1 day or 2 days, if 3 want to go 1 day and 3 another day. Or
Well, we've got at least 4
whatever.
people right now,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I'm comfortable with having Mr. Cloutier, Ms. Messier, Mr. Nyquist, and Ms. Napton go if you want to go.
Yeah,
Andrew.
I would like to do that.
I don't have a problem with that.
Can we make a motion to make that the subcommittee that goes?
All right, there's a motion by Mr. King to have a subcommittee comprised of Mr. Cloutier, Ms. Messier, Ms. Napkin, and Mr. Notquist. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Napkin. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, like I said before, the more heads, the better. Just let me ask the superintendent, in his previous experience, how many people went for search committees when he was a superintendent?
Oh, God, probably a range of 6 to 10. Obviously, the 10 being high, which is unusual, but usually you get, 5 to 6 people that will go out. That's more the norm. And I think you're heading back to going as a group. I've never heard of it individually. It's you won't get the same information, if you will, and it's an inconvenience for the candidates because they're going to try to gather people in their district, so go as a team. And as long as you have the majority of the 4 going, then you're in good stead, if you will, for comparison between the 2 individuals. But usually it's a good 5 to 6 people that go out.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cludier?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that, Dr. Malvey. I'm glad you chimed in there. With that being said, I think what I'd rather see us do is not set up this subcommittee. And let's set the site visits up, and let's work with everybody's schedule as best we can. Look, we all have jobs and outside of the school, but those who can make it, go. And we get as many people that can go as possible. I think that this isn't one person's decision. 7 people have to make this decision. And no 2 people are going to walk away from a site visit, from an interview, from a sit-down session with either the candidate or his colleagues with the same take. Everybody's going to have a little different spin on that because they're going to perceive it differently. And I think that's all important information.
Okay. I certainly have no...
Just a thought, I mean.
Yeah, I certainly have no problem with that. How do other members... Mr. Nyquist?
Mr. Chairman, just from what the superintendent said and Mr. Cludier says, we should have somebody from management going, and I'm going to ask a loaded question, but I'd like to see Julie Supernut go, but maybe we could get somebody else as a principal or somebody who has some, not front office, but somebody who's works in a system to look at this at the same time, whether it's a principal or somebody, so they have some idea of what the workings are on their idea beside the school committee on the search, on the interview.
If I may, just a point of clarification, I think the 4 committee members is more than sufficient. My reference was really in the total group, because oftentimes they do what you're suggesting, Kurt. Maybe there's some other school people that would be involved as well to go along on the site visit. But certainly for a committee of 7, 3 to 4 is quite acceptable to go forward. But if you want to branch it out, then you can get into some other folks. That was my reference to 6, but I certainly didn't mean 6 committee members going.
Okay. Well, I guess that brings up another issue that the board needs to make a decision on. We've already given up this search process to a subcommittee to bring back a group of 3 people to us. To Mr. Cludier's point, 7 people on this table are going to end up making the decision. So I need some direction from the board as to, do you want other people involved in these site visits, and if so, who? So that the chair can put a committee together and start making an appointment for the site visit. So we need to have some discussion about this as to whether you want people other than the 4, or whether you want what Mr. Cludier's suggesting, let all members go, or is what's now being suggested to have 4 members go and other people from the organization.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Napkin.
Personally, I think that we should keep it open to anybody on the search committee that can go, but I would absolutely like to open it up to either administrators or principals in the district, because I feel like that was a voice that was missing in the search process, and I think they have invaluable knowledge as to some of the interpersonal things that happen, and I think that it would be a valuable tool to have 1 or more of them. A lot of it's scheduling, I think. It may be that there's only 1 or 2 that are available even, but I think that to open it to them would be helpful for us in the future.
Any thoughts about that from other members?
I agree with Angela. I think we were missing on the search committee the high school input. I think it was more elementary level, and I'd like to see some more of the secondary administration perhaps go on the site visits.
The chair is really looking for a specific recommendation. Do we want 2 people? Do we want 2 principals? Do we want a principal and a vice principal? Do we want somebody from the business office? Because we're certainly not going to rent a bus and go there with 20 people. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that whatever members of the board that can attend, attend. There's 7 of us. I'm suspecting that given schedules and whatnot, a couple may not be able to attend that. And I would then make a recommendation that we ask 2 principals from the schools to attend with us.
okay.
All right, well, we need to deal with that first, then. Thank you.
Who was that motion from?
The other motion was to have the 4 school committee members.
From who?
From me.
Would you withdraw that?
Sure, it looks like it's going to end up being the same thing anyways, but whatever.
Just so that we can make the way through
Sure.
the parliamentary process here. Motion to withdraw, Chris's second,
Second.
Second.
seconded by Vinnie. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
So voted.
Okay.
Now, motion by Mr. Cludier.
To allow whoever is able from the school committee to attend the site visits, along with 2 principals from the district.
Is there a
Second.
second for that?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Mr. Nyquist. Any further discussion on that?
Are we going to put a time frame on this, just so this doesn't drag on?
Yeah.
Because to me, if we don't get this done by the week of the 10th, we're going to be dropping in another person that he calls up. So, I mean, it's great that everybody wants to go, but if it's going to take us a month to get there, that would be my only concern.
It would be the position of the chair that, once this vote is taken, I will start setting up site visits. Tomorrow, I will have a date, and that's going to be the date. Whoever can go, because we're going to be moving forward with the interviews, and we're going to have to make a determination that those people that want to go are going to have to adjust their schedules and go to whatever date I get set up,
Sounds good. Thank you.
okay?
Usually after.
In light of that, then I'll publicly make the announcement now to any of the principals in the district that would be interested in going to, please send me an email at the school site or to my own email address that you're interested, and the chair will select 2 principals to be included in the process. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Are there any other thoughts that members have on any bases that need to be touched? I'll go forward with the site interviews. We know what we're doing as far as the interview process. I need the questions from members, hopefully by the beginning of next week, the latest. The end of this week would be even better, so that I can get those vetted with school council, because it will take some time to get stuff back with him. Is there anything else that you would like to see included in the process? We are going to go into executive session after this to discuss the type of contract that we want to be prepared to offer to the people that we're interviewing, but that will be done in executive session. But, anyone have any other thoughts?
No, sir.
Okay, if not, then we'll move on. Under new business, in your packet, you have a letter from our business manager, Julie Supina. I would like to inform you that I am resigning from my position as business manager for the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District, effective November 16, 2014. Thank you for the opportunity that you have provided me during my tenure. If I can be of assistance during this transition, please let me know. I would be glad to help however I can. I think, Julie, you know how all the members of the board feel about you and the job that you've done. And although we're disappointed that you're leaving us, we're very happy for you from a professional standpoint, that you'll have an opportunity to better yourself. And we certainly appreciate everything that you've done for us. And I've had some discussions with Julie, and she is going to stay and work out her time with us, as she agreed to help us through the process, and has been gracious enough to offer to continue that, even if it goes longer than that, a couple days a week, until we get a person in place. So thank you, Julie, for being willing to do that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just, okay? Okay. Certainly, I'm thrilled for Julie to be moving on, but also, I think it's going to be a loss for this school district that are going to be very, very difficult to fill the void. I believe professionally, having been involved in the business so long, that there are people out there with a skill set, and certainly people that can count and know the numbers. But Julie is a unique individual. She's a fine young lady, a mother, and she goes above and beyond the call of duty for what she's been asked to do here in the district. Going back last year, the start of last year, Julie was in the district a few weeks ahead of me, and very quickly grasped the totality of the issue and went about trying to resort the numbers. And for those of you that followed the trail, if you will, committee was dealing with numbers that really didn't tie to what the previous budget was, if you will. Accounts had been switched around, and there was really no solid place to identify where things were supposed to be, and Julie straightened that mess out very, very quickly. Certainly it led to getting into a final budget for the previous year, FY14, and despite the various iterations that we had to get that budget approved, Julie was able to rise to the occasion, if you will, and sort it all out, and very patiently, certainly with the superintendent, because it was a maze for me to get involved, but more importantly for the school committee, and then the school committee to try to justify it to the community. So that's not the typical path that any business manager has to take or wants to take, but she did it. So she moves on. I wish her nothing but the best. And as I have posted the position, I'd like to offer to the school committee that even though it's the superintendent's responsibility, I would like to go through the initial stage of screening candidates, and then if the committee has interest, I'd like to create a subcommittee of the school committee to follow up with interviews and then share that appointment, albeit it's the superintendent's responsibility. I want to share that appointment with the school committee if they want to. I'm not saying you have to do it this way, but with final interviews in front of the full school committee. Certainly the superintendent has it as a responsibility, and I would make a recommendation ultimately to the full school committee. But if things progress, and you do end up with a superintendent candidate, and I start to segue out of the district, I'm targeting Thanksgiving, Christmas, thereabouts, if we're able to move smoothly in the process, then it would behoove us, and I think we can get the business manager on board sooner than that, unless someone is tied up with a lengthy contract where they have to give some substantial notice. But I would want to move that process forward so that we have someone in place and spend some time not only with me before I exit the district, but Julie has offered, despite the November 16th deadline, Julie, in her professional wisdom, has offered to come back as needed to help the individual. So I think Julie can speak for herself, but it is critical for this superintendent, as he leaves the district, as I know Julie and I have talked about it, that we're passing the baton on to two new people that haven't lived the challenge, if you will, that we have gone through. And I think it behooves those individuals that would come in to listen very, very closely to what we did, what we're currently doing, and how we see the remainder of the year progressing. Could conceivably be 6 months for an individual to come in. We'll already have started the budget process, but by that time, we'll be reporting out to you of where we're at from a financial perspective relative to FY15. I'm hoping that the audit will be done, and I'm hoping once that is done that the Department of Revenue will certify that information and what we may or may not have available for our excess and deficiency account. So Julie has committed to that. I'm committing to it. But in that I'll be leaving, I want to make sure the school committee is comfortable with whoever the candidates are in the eventual selection. So I want to put that out for consideration as a subcommittee, probably 2, no more than 3 members of the school committee, and then ultimately full review by the school committee. So I leave it to the discretion of the committee.
Mr. Superintendent, it absolutely will be a cooperative effort of the committee and the superintendent in selecting the next business manager. And it would be the chair's intent, and I hope the board would concur, that if we move this process along and we have a superintendent selected within the next couple of weeks, that hopefully that person will be able to be available through their schedule to also sit with Dr. Malvy and help through the interview and the process of going through and finding somebody. I know just the response that I've got from members of the board, that I think most people sitting here want to be involved in that process. So I think if you're suggesting 2 or 3, we probably should lean more on 3 if we're going to have a subcommittee, unless it's something that the board wants to do as a whole with you, but I don't know how that plays into what your suggestion here. But what's the feeling of members of the board? Mr. Nyquist?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say 2 things. First of all, I concur with Dr. Malvy about Julie. She did an outstanding job. I happen to sit on the interview committee when we hired her. And to get back to the second thing you talked about, what Dr. Malvy talked about, interviewing status, don't hold me, but I would say something. We had about 7 people who applied for Julie's job, and I was really shocked at that, at 7 people. This time here, I mean, everybody made their moves, and I think there'll be less, but I'm not a know-it-all. But I'd just like to concur that she did an outstanding job when she came on the board. And as far as a new person comes in, we hire her, so any member that wants to sit on that should be listening, because it's going to come back to us again, just like the superintendent. It's going to come back to us. So if we can move it along, that's fine.
Any other members have any suggestions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Cludier?
I would certainly like to be part of that subcommittee.
Okay. Any other members interested in being on that subcommittee?
I would be interested in that.
Angela? The chair would be willing to serve as well, if no one has any objections to that. So is there a motion to form the subcommittee of Mr. Cludier, Ms. Napkin, and myself to work with the superintendent?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. That brings us to the next issue is...
If I may, I would just say that I think that I concur with Dr. Malvy's comments.
Yep.
This is critical to fast-track this, probably faster than we're doing with the superintendent search. So I would just say that if those members of that subcommittee can't be there at the appropriate times when this needs to happen, that we just need, the process needs to move forward. It can't be held up by one of the subcommittee members.
I agree.
I just think we need to have that consideration, because I think it's pretty important that we fill this, not just with a body, but with the correct person.
Right. I agree, Mr. Cludier.
Okay.
And I think all members taking on the challenge here should subscribe to that Dr. Malvy would contact us, give us the date and time of the interviews, and where to be there at that time. The second part of that is Dr. Malvy, we've had some discussions, and he has already gone forward and posted that on School Spring. I had made a request that it also be put in the Telegram Gazette and the local paper, which came as a request from other members as well, in the Boston Globe. Dr. Malvy's position on it is normally just done on School Spring, and he's more than happy to do that and has no objections, but he really needs a vote from the board of us instructing him to move forward to advertise in that manner.
Mr. Chairman, so through you to Dr. Malvy, and I did have a conversation with Dr. Malvy prior to the meeting. I shared with Dr. Malvy that I felt that it could be beneficial to also put it in the papers that there are certainly private sector employees that have made the transition in very recent history to school business managers, and they may not see it on School Spring, because I think that's kind of a closed environment. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Malvy. That's a pretty closed environment, School Spring, correct?
No. It's well known in the industry, and it's open to anyone. People can access it. You don't have to pay a fee to access it for the vacancies that are there. But for a district to advertise and participate through, because you can apply through School Spring, there is a fee for the district. But it is quite well known, and that in this day and age really has taken over from the newspaper ads. But I understand your point. In case people are not familiar with it, then excuse me, someone in the local area or the Worcester area through the TNG certainly could pick it up. I would not recommend going to the Boston Globe because a typical ad is well over $1,000. In this day and age, you don't get the bang for the buck on it. We will also put it out with MASBO. MASBO is the state school business organization, and we'll be sending it to MASC and MASS as well. So I understand your point, Vinnie, but those that really, particularly those in the education industry, and I don't just mean school, but those in the education industry watch School Spring very, very, very closely. And the other groups that I just mentioned, even though they may not be intimately involved in the receipt of materials, they refer people to it as well. But to your point, we can get it out in some of the local papers as well to see if there are folks in the area that may want to jump ship from a private sector environment coming into the public schools.
I'm not looking to spend money frivolously, so if there's no benefit and you don't feel there's benefit, I'm not looking to be insistent upon this. That's not where I'm going. I just felt that if we got it out on, Monster, and we got it out in a couple of the local papers, if you find somebody from an accounting background that, wants to make that transition into education, I know that certainly can be done. It has been done successfully. We don't have to make, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a motion that we give the superintendent the latitude to make the decision whether to post this or not with local paper, monster.com, et cetera, pending what he's getting for responses through School Spring.
Well, let me ask, Mr. Superintendent, what's the response been so far in the past 7 or 8 days that it's been up?
When
When
One.
did it go out?
I think,
last week. It went out last
It's only
week.
been out for a week.
I mean, what's the cost for an ad in the Telegram? Is that, are we talking a couple $100 here? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for the sake of making sure that we come up with a pool of candidates, I'm really not concerned about spending $500 or $600 if that's going to bring us in one or two more possible or potential candidates. I think if we've only got one response so far, and I realize it's only been a week, and we're looking at a time frame of October 27th or something to start here, we need to get the word out here, I think, and use whatever tools are available.
Mr. Chairman?
I just want to, I'm not opposed to it. It's just that I get a little leery when I start spending some big money on an ad, but I'd be more than happy to do it. If it's the wish of the committee, we can, give it a shot in the Globe. But just the return on that investment hasn't always been good, but more than happy to do it.
I accept your point, Dr. Malvey. I don't think it's worth spending the money to go in the Globe, but I think maybe, Telegram Gazette.
Sure. Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Something. Ms. Napkin?
Personally, I think if we're looking for somebody that's not already in the school system, who's young, they're not looking in the Telegram Gazette, they're looking, Monster.com, if we're going to spend money, it's going to be, we should do it online. It should not be in a print ad. Because nobody under the age of even 40 now is looking in the newspaper for a job.
And I don't think it costs anything for Monster, Indeed, or...
Well,
If you
it
place
does,
it
it does
with
to
the
post
TNG,
jobs, yeah,
If you
but,
place it with the TNG, it automatically gets put on Monster.
well, then there you go.
So do you make that as a motion, Mr. Cloutier?
So move. Let's put it in the TNG.
Motion by Mr. Cloutier to have the superintendent put in that advertisement in the Telegram Gazette. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nordquist. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Just for the members' information, and correct me, Dr. Malloy, if I'm wrong, if by chance we run into some problem with numbers of candidates or people that we feel comfortable with, do we have access to MASBO with somebody temporarily if we have to go out for a longer process?
Yes, and other agencies, other groups as well. I can't say that we have, 4 or 5 people sitting in the bullpen right now ready to be called, but they're familiar with this, and we've already contacted them, but they'll certainly step up to try to identify candidates, as will MASS and MASC, and even some of the principal organizations as well. And even though I put a date there, I did that to expedite it. I'm a realist, knowing that if it doesn't happen, then we put it out again, and we put it out again, and we keep, moving down the path here. And if it doesn't hit with our target for when we'd like to have someone on board, there are other possibilities with financial agencies and independent accountants as well.
Yep.
It doesn't give us a Julie Supernaut, but it'll give us someone that can make sure that the checkbook balances. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
through you to the Business Administrator, Julie, where did you respond to the ad through?
Well, when I applied for the job, you didn't really post it very many places. You only put it on MASBO, which was just by chance I saw it. So you've already posted it more places this time than when you did it last time.
You saw it on MASBO.
Yes, and I've already sent it to MASBO. They said it should be up in the next day or two.
Oh, good.
All right, thank you.
All right, no other questions on that. We'll move on. Next item, bullying prevention and intervention plan. Dr. Malvey?
This is a legal requirement, and I'm going to ask Dr. Zaleski to come down just to give us a summary of it. The legal requirement has been with school districts for a number of years, but as often happens, there are updates that take place. And what Dr. Zaleski has done throughout the course of the summer was to go through the document, review it with the administrative team, and it's now ready for review by the school committee. Karen?
So Dr. Malvey is correct in stating every year legislation changes to make accommodations to the plan to ask us as school administrators to put those provisions in the bullying prevention and intervention plan. So this past year, in June, the policy has changed. And what you see in the packet that was sent to all of you highlighted are the changes, direct language changes from the legislation. So basically, in a nutshell, what has changed is it's not only student-to-student bullying, but administrators and staff members can be deemed bullies as well under the criteria of the law. And so what I did was I took the legislation, I embedded it into the plan, took our existing action plan and tailored it so that it addresses a plan in the event administration or staff were considered bully. And staff can mean, teachers, cafeteria workers, bus monitors, et cetera. So that's essentially the bulk of it. The rest has remained the same. Typically with these plans, we always work, I actually work very closely with the DA's office, and I usually do a double check on myself when I add the legislation in, and I did run this by Attorney Julie LaShaw, Assistant DA, and she said, yep, I was on target in terms of the components that were changed. And then, of course, I turned it over to the superintendent, who has our legal counsel take a quick look at it, and then it goes before you folks for the final approval. And then at that point, we will put it on the website, and this will be our new existing plan in alignment with the legislation changes.
What's outlined in yellow, are those changes, Karen?
Yes, those are add-ons, yep.
Any questions for any members for Karen? Mr. Nordquist?
After reading that, Karen, I didn't see it, but I just want to say to this point, it had nothing to say about if something happens that we be notified as a school committee. I don't like to read newspapers and find out what's going on, or hear stories on the street that something happened here that we weren't told of. So would you put that in there somehow so that we would get a call from the superintendent if there was something that was of a serious nature?
Right. So as you, so Mr. Nordquist, within the bulk of the packet, there is language, I don't have the page in front of me, that directly states that school committee will be notified, and actually school committee, especially if administrator is deemed a bully, would be the ones conducting the investigation. So school committee has will not only receive notification, but will be actually the investigating officers. in the case. So that is here in the packet. I'm not sure what page. I'm sorry, I don't have that. I did not sticky it according to, who was deemed the investigating officer.
It comes in response, Karen, to the discipline of bullying.
Yes.
At that point, the committee would be informed, and it would have some say as to whether action was going to be.
So,
I've got to step in for a second. There's a fine line, with all due respect, I think what Karen had pointed out, that there is a section here that does deal where the school committee may legally get involved. But for the typical run-of-the-mill bullying, if you will, school committee does not get involved with it because there's another set of statutes that deal with the confidentiality of student records.
that's right.
And I think that might have been what you were referring to, Kurt. So I just want to clarify it that legally, the school committee is considered third party, and they do not have access to the information that obviously administratively we have to deal with because it's a violation of the law. And who the student may be and/or what the consequences may result from that. But certainly, if there's a major snafu, there is a way for the superintendent to apprise the committee without violating the law and divulging the confidentiality of what the superintendent is restricted through the law. So I just want everyone to be sensitive to that because something could happen, tomorrow. And if the school committee weren't apprised, I don't want you to think that, well, by goodness, because you said it this evening, we just have to be sensitive. And it all comes under this piece about school committees being considered third party, as anyone else, third party, saying, hey, I want to know what happened, yada, yada. We can't divulge that. We have to maintain that confidentiality. But clearly, as you have seen while I've been here, if there has been some major incident, whether it's bullying or violence of one student to another or to the property, there is a way that I can legitimately inform the committee without breaking any other laws. Okay, is that helpful?
Mr. Chairman.
And just to recap on that, the Family Education Right to Privacy Act, FERPA, is what Dr. Malvey is referring to, and it's on the any link. You can just Google it and read more about it if you'd like more information, and we can certainly get that to you. But there is definite protections under FERPA for students and families in bullying situations and cases. So the school committee absolutely is a third party, except in the cases of when an administrator is direct. Administrator meaning if the superintendent were identified, let's say, and school committee had to be involved to investigate. But other than that, FERPA applies in all instances. As a matter of fact, teachers can approach us and ask questions about students that don't directly have any involvement with them when a bullying case is brought to our attention. All investigations have to be handled in a confidential manner under that law. And that applies to all school officials as well as school committee, parents, et cetera.
Chairman.
Mr. Nyquist?
No, I don't want to be involved in any privacy, and I understand that wasn't my question. What my statement is at the end of the day, when the superintendent makes his call on if, whatever he does, if he notified the school committee of what his call was. Just for an example, if there was a bombing at a school, we'd be notified. I don't care. I don't want to know who was involved or whatever, but we'd be notified that something happened, and that's it. That's all. Just have to tell us so we don't, see things in the paper. Thank you.
Again, Kurt, I just want to clarify, that's a separate issue from the bullying piece, and you have seen through my practice while I've been here that if there are activities such as you mentioned that I do, FYI, the committee, but specifically the bullying and prevention is students to student or student to staff, and ultimately it could be staff to students. That's where the confidentiality piece comes in, but certainly I respect the need for the school committee to be aware of if there are major incidents in the school, but that's a different twist than the bullying and prevention policy. Does that help?
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you, Karen.
We have the emergency response plan next, so.
On this, what I'm going to ask is if the committee will take this and read it through, Any questions that you have, please feel free to direct them, I'm going to say to Dr. Zaleski, rather than a pass-through, or if there's something you want to bring to my attention, be happy to take a look-see at it. I have sent it off to council, and as soon as we get a response back there, we think we're pretty tight with this because it has been worked out in close conjunction with the district attorney's office. But we want our own counsel to check in, and certainly you people have the opportunity, and then we'll bring it back for a final vote. Okay?
Fair enough.
Next item, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. Yep, okay. So if we could move on to the next item, the emergency response plan. Again, this is something that is required. We've had it for a number of years, as all school districts do. And as Karen will point out, there are modifications that need to be made as time goes on, and you have the expertise at the state level looking at it, as well as our own local safety personnel. So that's what's in front of the committee. Karen has done a great job with this and has had several meetings, but I'll let her carry it from here.
So this past summer and into the early fall, beginning of the school year, I did have the opportunity, the folks that you see on here who this plan was revised by wasn't directly involved. So I'd like to acknowledge that officials in both Spencer and East Brookfield came together. Chief of police, fire chief, school psychologist, lead nurse, principals, EMS coordinators, EMT firefighters, all came together and met with me along with Dr. Malvey to look at the plan and go through the different components of the plan based on their expertise and give us directed feedback as to what needed to be changed. And in a nutshell, the plan's in really good shape. Not much needs to be changed. I'm just going to highlight a couple of bullet points just so the committee is aware of what we discussed. Staffing needed to be updated. You know, people who no longer work here work in the town, so we had to update this, the staffing throughout the plan. The bullying law changes that I had presented before you in the bullying plan has been added to this plan as well, because that falls under the bullying section of the emergency response plan. So once that's approved, that'll be official in the emergency response plan as well. And then there was a discussion that radios still need to be purchased that connect directly to the police department in the event that there's a drastic emergency, such as a weather hazard or any emergency for that matter. And then we're assessing a key situation with Lake and David Prouty High School in terms of ultimately setting up lockdown drills, but we just need to assess how many doors actually lock in David Prouty and Lake Street to determine when we can set up those lockdown drills. So the town officials are very interested in coming in and working with us to conduct those drills, but there's some things that we need to look at as a school. And then what the police department has requested, along with the fire department in both towns, is that we electronically generate floor plans for them so they can put it into their cruisers. So right now there is floor plans in this emergency response plan. I have asked around to see if folks have electronic version of these plans. Wya Village, I believe, is the only school that does have the electronic version. So it's a work in progress. I am still trying to figure out how to do that, and working very closely with Dr. Malvey and our tech department. It's my hope that we can get that done so the town officials can have that, because they feel that's the best access in the event of an emergency. They can pull it right up on their cruises if they need to get into our buildings and know how to make their way around the buildings in the best manner possible. So that essentially is the changes. No other changes. The rest of it, like I said, within their disciplines and within our discipline as school officials, we believe the plan is sound and solid in the event of any of the emergencies that are listed within this plan. So I encourage you to look it over and certainly give us any feedback from your perspective, and I'd be open to making further revisions if necessary.
Karen, just taking a quick look at it when it came in our packet, and I'll look at it more in depth over the next week or so and get back to you on any questions that I have, but just a few off the top of my head. And we've had this discussion among board members in the past already, but for instance, incidents like bomb threats, a student, God forbid, killed on campus, on one of the school campuses. To Kurt's point, I see all the notifications go out, but nowhere in there is the school committee notified or the chairman of the school committee notified the other members. And that's something that we are going to insist on as we go forward with the new superintendent. We end up on the stand when the suits come. And I'm not looking for students' names, I'm not looking for sensitive information or information that's protected, but we want whoever the superintendent is, when these things happen, we want to be notified, and we don't want it by chance. I'm, as chair, I'm looking for to see it in the policy.
Sure.
And likewise, I didn't see any input from clergy in the community with those type of deaths that may occur, God forbid. And I think that that's an important component that should be included, at least be offered to stuff, and they should be somewhere, fit somewhere in the notification schedule. And I didn't see anything in regards to American Disabilities Act or handicap access. And my only thought on that would be is there must be some type of process that's different for everybody else, for someone that has some type of mental or physical incapability. So I'll put a list together of things that I
Sure.
think that should be at least looked at and included. But as one member, I'm going to insist that somewhere along the line, either the chair of the school committee or the school committee as a whole is included in the notification process. Again, not for sensitive information, not for names, not for, and as Dr. Melvey said, he has done that in the past here, but we don't know who's going to be sitting here next, and I want to see it in black and white.
Sure, your point is well taken, and I think the best approach to this is have all the committee review this, give me your directed input, because what I'd like to do is not just take your input and type it into the plan. I really want to pull this committee back together, because building by building, as we're handling situations, things there might be barriers that I'm not aware of, and I really need the input of building principals and all the stakeholders that put this together to see how best to address the committee's suggestions. So I think that your point is well taken, Mr. Hayes, and absolutely, I think we can work it into the plan, but again, I want all stakeholders involved in that.
Anyone else have any comments or questions, suggestions? None? Okay, thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Next issue, bus rules. Dr. Melvey?
We have passed on some information to you. There's been a slight revision. I'm going to ask Kathy Ostrout, our transportation coordinator, to come down and just point out where the changes were made. In the past, we've had some inconsistencies at the elementary level in particular, I believe. Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So Kathy and her folks and our transportation vendor reviewed this along with the principals, and we think that we have more consistency now, and it would require school committee action, and then from this it would be brought forward into the student handbooks, which is a requirement for all school districts. Kathy?
Yeah. For the last 25 years, we worked with the same routes, bus rules, and for some reason over the years they've gotten changes have been made that I wasn't aware of. So Melody Miller is the manager of AA, and she has come with me. We sat and redid the routes, the rules, consolidate them into a page and a quarter, which is a little bit more than what we used to have. And basically, we just specified how the ticket system works, and that was the biggest problem. And now all the schools will be on board as far as how the tickets are handled, how the suspension goes. So that's basically all we did, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page with the ticket system.
Now, these hold true for all bus riders, whether they're kindergarten or high school?
K through 12,
Okay.
right.
All right.
There are some areas where, like babysitting purposes, of course, wouldn't be for the high school. The younger kids do it.
And where do the rules for conduct for the kids while they're on the bus, where do those fall? Do those fall in the handbook of the school?
They are going into the handbooks. We used to give out copies, and I used to make copies, and they would send them out. Parents would sign them and send them back. But now, with them in the handbooks, I guess the parents can just sign that they've seen them. But the only thing we changed was just, we definitely made sure that the ticket system was the same way for everybody.
Excuse me, Kevin, can you explain what the ticket is that you're referring to, and then Mr. Hayes can go on?
If a student misbehaves on the bus, the driver writes a ticket for them. The ticket goes home, parent signs it, and it goes back to the bus driver. The driver brings it into AA, and they put it in their file cabinet. That is only a warning. If he or she misbehaves a second time, driver writes a ticket, goes into AA. They send a copy of the ticket, and they have a form that they send that goes to the principal. and the principal handles it from there, contacts the parent because that student is off the bus for 3 days. Next infraction, it's the same process, only it's 5 days. And then if there's another ticket, then the superintendent gets involved. I've only had that happen once since I've been doing busing for 27 years, that the superintendent had to get involved.
Okay.
But the principals handle the second and third tickets.
I think that will answer my question. My thought is, say a high school student lights up a cigarette on the bus, he gets a bus ticket. Then that goes to the principal of the high school, and then there's rules in the handbook from the high school that would address what happens to that
And then
student.
Martha puts it on the website, too.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions for Kathy?
Mr. Chairman.
Nyquist?
I would say 15 years ago or so, I drove for Vonnie Bus, so I understand these rules. But I just have a question, and you can probably answer it. When I drove bus years ago, there will be kids not being as a group, which says here, you go to a group and get picked up. They want curbside service, and that, I didn't have a problem with that, but it just slows everything down, and I came to school lots of times, the bus was late. And even once or twice, I can count my hand that the class already started, and we're pulling in at the high school, in the junior high school. So I don't know if they can be grouped up together, 4 or 5 kids meet here or whatever, instead of curbside service pickup, because it just takes time, and what happens is they get late for school.
We have many consolidated stops, Kurt.
That's good.
Especially in town. We'll get a group of, as many as 15, like down on Lincoln, Pleasant, up around Temple Street, we've got stops. Years ago, when it was kindergarten, the half-day sessions, we did door-to-door at midday because they were the only ones out there. But now we are consolidating as much as we can.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else?
This will require action, Mr. Chairman, by the committee.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Nyquist to approve,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Messier. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy. Next issue, MCAS report. Dr. Melby?
We have a summary version of the MCAS that I'm going to ask the principals to come up and speak relative to their respective school. But just for a point of clarification, the State Department of Education controls the release of the MCAS data very, very tightly. And we were directed, not just us, but all school districts throughout the state, we were directed by the Department of Education not to release it until they gave all school districts the green light. And for many months, we were aware of that. We, as school officials, have access to the data, but it's embargoed for public release. And the state had directed all districts not to release it until they give us that green light, which at the time was expected to be the week of September 22. On our meeting last week with the DSAC folks, they, and I think we met on Wednesday, they confirmed that there had been no change by the department. So we were anticipating that we wouldn't be able to release it until the week of the 22nd. Lo and behold, late Thursday, I received an email from our contact people at DSAC, and they said that they were just notified that the department now would authorize the release of last Friday, specifically at 11 o'clock in the morning. So they lifted the embargo, and they told school districts they could go forward with it. So that's why we're bringing it forward this evening. We're going to start with East Brookfield, and then Spencer will report for Wire Village, Knox Trail, and the high school. And what you have in front of you will make a little more sense, I hope, when Ron points us to the right spots to look at.
It probably won't help, but I'll try. Okay, this is basically the accountability report that tells, where we stood on the three major tests and what level school we are. And as you know, we were level 3. This was our first year being level 3. So if you look at the graph, the bars, not all categories have bars because those are all subgroups, and you have to have a certain percentage of students in your school fall into those categories to have data that's valid. So that's why we have bars next to all students, and we have high needs, low income, and then the white population. And the important part of this is if you look way over to the right, where it says improved below target, that tells you how we're doing as a school in each of the categories. So if you look, the first grouping here is ELA, proficiency gap. And in every category, all students, high needs, low income, and the white population, we improved in every subgroup, which is really good. We haven't met the target yet. We're still below, but we've made great inroads this year. And if you look down the next group, it's mathematics. And you go to the far right, and you'll see the same thing. We're below target, but we've improved in every single category and subgroup. And down for science, we basically stayed the same with no change. So, none of us are happy about being level 3, but we're really, really encouraged by these numbers that we've improved this last year in every single category and subgroup. That's it.
Questions from members? Mr. Tallman, your PPI points, they have here 50.
Yes.
The target goal is 75?
Right.
Yeah, to be performing. What was it for last year?
We were in 25 on a lot of those.
Or 20?
Yeah, so we've gone up on quite a bit of them, which again is, we're not where we want to be yet, but we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I just see improve, but I don't know improve from what point.
Right. A lot of these you'll see we're 25.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions from any members? Okay, next.
Thank you.
Melvie, who's next?
Wire Village, Principal Linda Stanlin.
Good evening, everyone. I would have to start by saying that what I witnessed last year with my first experience with MCAS in this school was a collaborative effort among staff, students, and families where they all seemed to embrace the MCAS testing opportunity. I know you like to sometimes be a fly on the wall and hear what happens in the buildings. My very first day was a sign that I saw in the 4th grade wing. I understand it had been created by a current 3rd grade teacher who happens to be sitting here tonight. That sign said, MCAS, meeting the challenge with amazing success. The students here receive milk and breakfast and juice and snacks, notes of encouragement from home and extra recess sometimes for, not payment for what they do, but certainly for recognition that they put forth good effort. I thought you would like to know that. Parents made extra efforts to get students to school each day and on time. A review or overview of the results will show you in the same aspect as Mr. Tomlin just presented. The accountability and assistance level for Wire Village is level 2. But as I said to our staff, we still have further to go, and we'll do it together. In ELA, the results to the right show an overall rating of on target and above target. In mathematics, we see ratings of no change, meaning consistency, in several areas, as well as improvement, though not yet meeting the target in the overall high needs category, and on target with our students with disabilities. Science, the results for last spring indicate a decline in all areas, unfortunately. The 5th graders are the only grade assessed in science at the elementary level, yet we realize the results are cumulative and reflective of previous grades and experience. And each year we are assessing a different group of students. So I looked further to see that the students scored well in the multiple choice options, but not as successful in open responses and short response questions. Interestingly enough, at our last administrative DSAC meeting, we discussed ways to unite curriculum mapping in ELA with the sciences and social studies, so I feel we are moving in the right direction and aligning our goals.
Thank you. Any questions from Ms. Nyquist?
Chairman, you just talked about the science, and it said decline, so what you just said about that, that's basically what my question was, but I think science is like math and English, but I think science is really an up-and-coming thing today. So But,
We agree with you.
yeah. Oh, okay, thank you. So you answered my question, but I just wanted to bring it up. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Ms. Messier?
Through you to the superintendent, please. I'm just curious, how come East Brookfield Elementary didn't report on students with disabilities, but Wire Village, and it looks like Knox Trail also has students with disabilities, but not Proudy and East Brookfield Elementary?
I'd have to defer to Ron.
Enough kids.
We don't have enough students on IEPs in our school. That's the percentage of students that makes it a subgroup. You have to have a certain percentage.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Ron. Any other questions? Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next, Dr. Murray?
On Knox Trail, Joyce Nelson will step up.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi, good evening. So Knox Trail continues to be at level 3. However, I'm absolutely thrilled with the gains that Knox Trail has made over the year. If you take a look all the way to the right, all students in ELA are on target. Again, we have improved or are on target in every area, which is pretty phenomenal. If you also look at, if you want to compare last year to this year, if you look at the baseline that is set by the state, next to that is how we did last year on CPI, and then how we did this year. So you can see the CPI change, and then it will give you the rating. So we did very well in ELA, in mathematics, which mathematics was the area that we really focused on last year. Particularly, we've been focusing on our low-income population. And then if you look at our science, we made terrific gains in science. Although we are below the target set by the state, we still made great gains. If you look at the science, we have 8.3, 6.4, and 6.6 CPI points increase. So, you know, we're on the right path. It took a lot of work. I believe that the curriculum work that we've done has helped us, and I'm very optimistic that we'll continue to go in the right direction. So we did not decline in any area, and we are either on target or improved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sculia.
Through you to Mrs. Nelson. 6-year goal category, is that goal for 6 years based off of 2013, or is that a 6-year goal starting from this year going forward 6 years?
The 6-year goal, I believe, is set by the state they set the 6-year goal. So it could be from, you know, as far back as 2008.
I guess that's what my question is.
Yes.
When was that goal set?
It's 6 years ago. So I believe that's correct, unless any of my colleagues want to.
Okay. I mean, that was across the board for everyone, really.
Sure.
Yeah, the 6-year goal was implemented, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone back there, when this accountability system was implemented back in 2011, that's when the 6-year goal started.
So
That's when they created goals for each school and district.
So it would be through 2017, that would be the goal for 2017. Just because it's significantly higher than, you know, than where we are in all the categories, and I just didn't know where it started, or if that kept evolving, if you will, if that was an average, and it kept moving, it was a moving target, you know? Okay, that was my question, thank you.
What I noticed, Joyce, from both Wire Village and then going on to Knox Trail, is math really seems to be a problem.
It is.
And I'd like your take and Linda's take as to what is the problem? Why are we having such difficulty in math at both Wire Village and at Knox Trail? And if the idea of this testing of MCAS, one component is to help improve the curriculum and the teaching process, how are we using this to do that, to make these numbers move a little bit better? And lastly, the same question I gave to Ron, you've moved up 50 to 50 on the PPI, but where is that from? What were you last year?
Well, I did not run that report, but what you can look at is where we were at, and it does say on this report what the CPI was on 2013 and then next to it is where we're at on 2014. But I will get the PPI points to you for last year. And I really am happy that you asked that question about math, because I'm happy to speak to that. We have been poor in math in this district for as long as I can remember. And we have declined and declined and declined. For me personally, I'm not a math, that's not my strong point. My assistant, that's her strong point. But you're absolutely right. That is our point of weakness, and that has kept our level where it is. It's our math scores, so that's been our area of focus. And to be perfectly honest with you, up until this year, we were working with 1998 materials in math. Our textbook was from 1998. We had not purchased new math series. We were trying to teach standards that didn't go along with the books that we had. So I'm very happy right now that we've purchased a new workbook that aligns perfectly to the Common Core standards, and that we are now, we have adopted Engage New York, which also is aligned to the Common Core standards, particularly in math. We've adopted that. So we're on the right track, because we were flailing in math, because people were using whatever they had as resources. So what happened is that there was no consistency, and there were huge gaps, particularly in my building, because we had schools fed to us from Wyer Village and East Brookfield. So there were significant learning gaps in mathematics because there was no consistency. So with the work that we've done with curriculum and with DSAC, I'm very happy to see that we've made improvement, that we did not decline, that we are on the right path. And I hope, and I know that we will continue to do so. With this is a very basic report that we gave you. The amount of information that's accessible to us as school administrators and teachers it's overwhelming. However, we can take these reports and we can actually pinpoint where our areas of weakness are. And last year for us, we focused on our low-income population. Your special, in order to come out of a level, you need to be proficient for all students and for high needs. So we've really focused on our low-income and special needs students, particularly in mathematics. That's where the gaps have been, and that's where we know we need to work. We need to do that, but we can't lose sight of our ELA in science. So we recognize that's a problem. That's a district problem that we've had since pre-K and K. Math has not been the priority in this district, and I'm happy to say that we now at Knox Trail for the past couple of years have maintained our STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math. And now that we are aligning the curriculum, it really will help us. And I know that we'll see improvement.
Mm-hmm. Linda, if I may, where did you go? There, yeah. Do you see what you're doing here at Wyer Village being in line vertically, going from here to Knox Trail, and what's happening in math at this point? Do you have the tools that you need?
We actually have them, I think, in place now, as Joyce has just mentioned to you, but I have to also credit that you have to remember we had a grade structure change, and we did have some DSAC work that started prior to my arrival last year and prior to our involvement with DSAC team this past, last year and following through this year. So we had that in effect in the 4th grade level at that time. They've made a lot of success with that. They work closely with the DSAC team to recognize. We use some other reports as well, such as item analysis, to see where, and that's a report that would show you sample test items, what the correct answer was, what different students answered, so that we can see if we missed something in our instruction, whether it was because of a vocabulary term perhaps, or a skill. But I think all those things are getting into place now. And some of my strength in the past has been in mathematics, so I look forward to embracing this.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Karen or Linda? No, all set? Thank you.
Excuse me.
Mr. Bayshant next? Oh, you guys.
Jody wants to say something.
Oh,
I'm sorry, is that okay for me to?
sure, go ahead.
Also, too, I think that's going to really help us is the transitional sixth grade now. Having a majority of sixth graders in our building, the curriculum is aligned 6th to 8th grade, so that is going to help us. But we are also, everything that we do, we're including East Brookfield. So initiatives that are being made in our building are also happening with the sixth grade in East Brookfield.
Good.
So that will help us as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Linda?
And that reminded me of one more thing. This is why we get together well as an administrative team. But we did have some work happening at the 5th grade level in previous years with at least part of the 5th grade team, where the team taught to their strengths, in demonstrated strengths in mathematics and science. While we did lose a number of 5th grade teachers to retirement, and they're happy, but they're coming back to sub some days, we now have all our 5th grade students, both wings, are being exposed to team teaching in the areas of math and science, so that they get that extra help in transitioning over to the middle school as well, or junior high.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Bayshon, as Dave is coming up to comment on the high school, I just want to re-emphasize, I just can't say it strongly enough, that there is a definite connection when you hear us talk about the curriculum mapping, the Common Core standards, the work with DSAC, the new teacher evaluation tool that is based on 4 standards. The fact of the matter is that as administrators, now as we start to flush out this new evaluation system, administrators can go through the new evaluation tool, if you will, which they will have iPads to do walkthroughs and classroom observations of the staff. But they'll be able to, once we get this curriculum business all squared away, they'll be able to pull down, I'll give you an example in the math, they'll be able to pull down what is being proposed by the state and the Common Core standards for certain mathematical standards within certain grades, and the administrators will be able to pull that down, identify it on their iPad, go into an instructional setting, and compare what the teacher is doing. Is it on target with what those Common Core standards are? So once we can get all this legwork done and get things sorted out, it wasn't in the past that instruction was not taking place and teachers didn't have things. It's just, it was all over the lot. And now, because of the requirements of the MCAS and other states that have their testing requirements, we have to specifically identify and say what's appropriate within certain grades based on these standards, and then that will become the tool, the benchmark, the blueprint for administrators to go in to see if it's actually taking place. And from a teacher's perspective, it puts them on target rather than trying to, pull a mishmash of areas within mathematics. It will be identified for them, and then their lesson plans should follow through from that, matched up with what those standards are. So it does get connected. It may seem convoluted, but it does make sense. And that's why we're so far behind, because it hadn't been done here in the district, but we're spending a lot of energy getting our house in order so that then in another year and another year, the things that are being tested here will be the information that is required that students be taught and they in turn learn. Simple as that. Dave, high school?
Good evening. First of all, you have 2 sheets that I provided you guys, and the first one says that our status has changed to a level 3 from level 1, and I'll address that in a minute. The second page shows the ELA, English Language Arts. It also shows the mathematics and the biology. We have the same 3 groups as the others, the all students, the high needs, the low income. If you go across all the way to the right-hand side under the ELA, you see we're above the target in all 3 of those. In the math, we're above target on 1, on target with 2. Biology, we're below target, but we are improving. The reason we've moved to level 3, the tough pill to swallow, is lack of participation with the high needs and low-income students. So, granted, these results came to us Friday. I took them home over the weekend, and I thought about it. And the high needs and low-income students total 44 students. And of those 44, only 39 took the biology MCAS. So 5 kids, for whatever reason, didn't take it. That puts those 2 high needs, low income categories in participation for the biology test only. In the ELA, we had 100%. All students, high needs, low income. In the mathematics, in the English language arts, all students, we had 99%. High needs, low income, 100% participation. In the math, it was 100, 100, 100. In the biology, it was 95% for all students, 89 for high needs, 88 for low income. So I took it upon myself to call the Department of Ed yesterday and express my concern as to, is that the reason we're a level 3 school? I said, if you take that criteria away, those 5 students on the biology MCAS, would we still be a level 1 school? The answer was yes. So I'm appealing that decision through them. They have an appeal process, and through the approval of Dr. Malvey, I have begun the appeal process. We have to get all our ducks in a row by September 30th to address, as to why those 5 kids did not take the test. So I'm kind of doing some investigative work myself to find out why not. And I've found out a few of them already. One of them has moved back to Canada. One of them was absent the entire week, so we have MCAS Monday, Tuesday, we have makeup Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday they're mailed back to the Department of Ed, and that particular student was out the whole week. So there is a process. We have begun it. I hoped by the middle of October to have an answer to our appeal, because if that's the only reason, I got to add one thing. This is the first year, correct, Joni? Yes. That they've used that participation data in the stakeholder process. It's the first year that they said, hey, participation. I guess there are schools out there that maybe skew their scores by, keeping scores, keeping kids from taking it. But that's all I have.
Thank you, Dave. This is no reflection on you. Certainly, you came in,
Yeah, but I was still there, so it still bothers me.
Yeah, well, it bothers me greatly because I think this is unacceptable.
Yep.
I think, the students didn't feel here, the teachers didn't feel here. We administratively failed both the students and the teachers.
Yep.
And I don't care when they put this into place. It's unexcusable. And there has to be, if we're going to run into these type of programs after all the effort the teachers and students have put in to go through this measuring process, then I'm going to suggest to the board when we get into budgets, we probably need somebody that's going to be responsible for the administration of this MCAS testing so that this never happens again. I mean, the stigma of having to deal with going from a level 1 to a level 3 school and join that bottom 20% of performing schools in the state is unfortunate for a staff and for students that put their best foot forward.
Yep.
And were meeting or above all of the standards that the state was looking for. So I don't know who the person or persons were that were responsible for it. That boat's already sailed. But I can assure you, I'm going to do everything I can as chair of this board that this never happens again. And we're going to have the proper people put in place to oversee this to make sure it doesn't happen.
Correct.
This is just unacceptable.
I agree. Mr. Cloutier?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Béchant, I can understand why the percentages would matter, though, because, I mean, you hit the button, the nail on the head. It could definitely skew the whole process.
Absolutely.
If you decide who can and cannot take the test. So a couple of questions. It's a mandatory exam, correct?
Yes.
Do you, as principal, do you have any leeway as to when you give that exam? In other words, let me put it in other words. You said Monday and Tuesday was the exam, Wednesday and Thursday was the makeup. Could you change that procedure and say Monday and Tuesday of this week will be the exam, Monday and Tuesday of next week will be the makeup? Just to make it easier so that...
Okay.
So there is.
There is. I don't think it's a big window, but it's a window.
I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job. I'm just trying to say, look, maybe if we change the way we administer it, you miss those couple of students that weren't there because of legitimate illness or whatever. How do we make sure that 100% of our kids take the test, the students take the test? How do we do that? I guess that's a question, and you don't need to answer it right now, but think that through, because maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a better way to make sure this doesn't happen.
I know I've already sat with my guidance counselors, and I said, hey, if you're in there, they're the ones that usually administer the exam. They proctor it. If you have a kid and an empty desk, I want your initials on that paper, and I want it on my desk, because I'm going to call home, drive home, whatever I have to do to get that kid to take that test.
I hear you.
You know?
So
But we have to do a better job
Understood.
telling the kids the importance of this exam, too. I think a lot of kids just come in and go B, 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 because they don't want to really be there. And we have to change that thinking.
That was exactly my next question. Do the students actually understand the importance of what just happened? Level 1 school to a level 3. Do they understand the relevance of that?
I don't think they're aware yet, because these results were just, the embargo came off Friday afternoon. So, I mean, I certainly haven't gone over the loudspeaker and said, hey, we just, you know what I mean?
I understand, but I think
And I do have to address it, but I wanted to go through this process first.
I think it's important for the students and the parents to understand the relevance and what this all means, because it's not just a number on a piece of paper. There is,
And I always, I try to, myself, the significance of this exam at the high school level. I mean, these are the stakeholders. They're not getting a diploma if they don't pass that test. You know, and we've done a pretty good job. You look at some of that CPI in there on the high needs kids in the English. Our target is 75 and they're at 86. That's phenomenal. So,
I'd like to ask just for a second to Dr. Zaleski. Hearing most of the principals have said something about high needs or low-income students. Are we providing the proper level of counseling support, psychologist support to the students? Does this weigh in? I know we've had to make cuts in the past. We've brought some back. But where do we sit with that?
So the realistic answer is no. We do not have enough support in this district. I have taken the existing supports that we have left after the 3 years I've been in this role and the budget cuts that we've encountered and spread out my psychologist staff thin. I think I've done a good job of eliciting support from Community Health Link as well as interns to fill the gap. But ultimately, if you look at the history of this district, we had a guidance director up at the high school. The guidance director directly assisted with MCAS oversight, ensuring accountability, follow-through, and directly partnering with the pupil service director to ensure that all the social service needs are met. And you know the history, but we don't have a guidance director. We're down to 2.5 guidance counselors at the high school, 1 guidance counselor at Knox Trail, a pupil service director who's also writing grants and involved in curriculum coordination. It's a lot. And I think you are 100% right, Mr. Hayes. This is an administrative problem. And administrators need to take responsibility for this, myself included as the Director of Pupil Services, partnering with that high school. And it is inexcusable. And I think the remedy to this is for the board to look at the administrative structure and how we're best using our resources in this district, how you're staffing central office, what the board's doing to prevent central office turnover, is, as the curriculum report stated, in addition to how we're staffing our schools, because these children deserve the best education possible, and I feel like we're not adequately staffed to provide them with everything that they need. Now, that's not to say with the existing staff we have, we're not doing a real good job, because I feel like every single educator in this district is putting their best foot forward in my department to do everything they can, working day and night, calling me at home. We're talking about treatment plans in the evening, texting each other to try to resolve issues that cannot be resolved during the day because we're all stretched. But that's where we stand. That's my perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think you answered a lot of Mr. Cloutier's question, and to the problem that Mr. Bayshant is alluding to. If we don't have a lead guidance counselor, if that person has been overseeing MCAS and coordinating these other efforts, then I think as the board moves forward in the upcoming year with our budget, we need to take a hard look at that, and we need data from you folks to show us what needs to be done to give you the proper support staff that you need. I think having somebody that is responsible for overseeing that will certainly eliminate these type of problems and stuff, so.
I agree.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did anyone else have any questions for Mr. Bayshant? Mr. Nordquist?
I just want to say, Dave, thanks for appealing that on behalf of the school and challenging those figures. And on the same line, on the science proficiency, is that what the biology, is that where the problem lied? They didn't take the test, and that's why you're below target?
Yeah, if I put another page in there, I had a participation page, and it shows ELA participation was for the same three groups, all students, high needs, low income, 99, 100, and 100% took it. Math, 100%, 100%, 100%. Biology, 95%, all students, 89% for the high needs, 88%. So those 5 students are actually the same 5 in both groups.
I want to say thanks for doing that, to challenge that, I'm not accept that we're on level 3 when you might not possibly be in level 3. So I want to say thanks for challenging it and going forward. You know, it's a good idea.
Anything else? Anyone else?
What's the time frame on the appeal process?
Deadline September 30th. I already have received some data for 2 of the students. I should receive a considerable amount more for the other 3 tomorrow. And then I'm going to, she says this doesn't have to be a formal letter, just simply throw it in an email, type away, and get it to me by the 30th, and they hoped maybe within a 2-week time frame they'll have an answer. So, I mean, to me, to take all the hard work that this staff and kids have done, if that's the only reason we went from 1 to 3, you know, every other criteria, right, we're above, met, or we're improving, so.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your effort, Mr. Bayshant. Okay, moving on, next item, trip request. A high school request is in your packet for Mrs. McLaughlin. She's looking to take student council to Hyannis. This requires a vote and approval of the board?
It does, right, and Dave and Mrs. McLaughlin will address it.
The Hyannis trip, I can attest, that's an annual one. That's where all the student councils in the state go down, and they've gone every year as long as I've been there, so.
For over 20
Mrs.
years.
McLaughlin would like to speak.
16 student council members would like to attend the conference, which will be March 11th to the 13th. And the spring conference is held in Hyannis. It's both motivational and educational. The 3 days are full of events, speeches, workshops, awards, and entertainment. They're a rewarding experience for any student leader. Attendees are trained in areas of leadership, allowed to network with students from across Massachusetts, and are celebrated as student leaders for their achievements throughout the year. More than 1,000 student council members from across the state attend. The students return with many new ideas and practical knowledge for running effective councils. Our council has been going for over 20 years. Okay.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Mrs. McLaughlin?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask a question. I think this is a mistake, or this is, it says date of trip 3/11 to 3/13. Is it
March
this year
11th
or
to
next year?
March 13th
So
of
it's next year.
2015.
Okay, because it doesn't say 15. That's why I thought it was a mistake, but, okay. Thank you.
Mayor, them together, or you do them individually? How do you?
Separately.
We're going to do them separate. That's a motion by Mr. Cloutier to approve. Is there a
Second.
second? Seconded by Ms. Napkin. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So voted. Next one is a field trip to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Nice field trip.
Approximately 5 students would like to attend the annual National Association of Student Councils Conference, which this year is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's on June 26th to June 29th. Massachusetts delegation will depart on the 25th. The NASC conference offers opportunities to meet and network with leaders from across the U.S. and around the world. They obtain new ideas from informative speakers. They go to workshops. They come up with innovative ideas about service learning. Participants come away with renewed enthusiasm for student council involvement at their schools. It's just a phenomenal experience. I've gone for the last 4 years. Last year it was in Florida, the year before in Oklahoma. It's just fantastic.
Any questions for Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. Gulia?
Just what, that's after school's out, correct?
Usually is. A couple of years ago, we went long enough that we left on the last day of school, but usually it's in the summer.
How does that work with the contract?
Any other questions?
Does the teachers go with them?
Yeah.
I mean, how does this work with the contract?
Well, it says teacher in charge.
I go with whoever goes, and it's a state delegation, so there are usually, like last year, we had 39 students and 12 adults. So it's a pretty good ratio.
Any other questions? Motion to approve.
Motion approved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Mr. Narcisse, seconded by Mr. Cludier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, so voted. I'd just like to thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, for all you do with the Student Council. You do a fantastic job, and you certainly bring a lot of stability to assisting those kids. Okay, trips are out of the way. Members have in their packet personnel information. Anyone have any questions for the superintendent in regards to personnel?
Mr. Chairman.
Nordquist?
This was brought up, I guess, last month by Mr. Cludier, and I didn't catch it into it, but I asked the superintendent through you, Mr. Chairman, on the person who got the job, help desk technician. Would you explain what the person does?
I will, but if I may, Mr. Chairman, bring down Steve Torrey. Steve is patiently waiting up back. Help desk, while Steve is coming down, is that on a daily basis, there are issues that all users of the computers throughout the district run into one problem or another. And they can go to what's called a help desk with a technician there that 99% of the time can fix that issue, within a few minutes. If there's anything more involved with it, then a work order can be put in, and Steve and some of the other folks may then become involved. But Steve, can you address it as well? Thank you.
Good evening. Yeah, Dr. Malva, you are correct. So, Mr. Nurkwurst, that position is a member of our team that sits at a location inside David Prouty High School, and they field phone calls and email requests to the technology department for various issues. The majority of the issues are user account issues, whether a user can't log in or can't authenticate to the email server and that sort of thing. The rest of the issues can range anywhere from I can't connect to a printer to I need help formatting the spreadsheet. So the help desk technician works on assisting users with those types of problems. They can do it many ways. They can do it either via the phone. They can do it via a remote desktop connection, which allows that technician to take control of the user's computer when the user's not there and install software or make any changes to the computer as necessary. And the other way that they can do it is through what they call a WebEx. And a WebEx is where the help desk technician and the user share each other's desktops. They can see each other's desktops so they can work them through the problems, show them where to click, how to manipulate whatever data they're trying to accomplish. That's the purpose of that position, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Steve?
I just want to say, I don't know how you found someone to do that for $11 an hour. In my office, we pay about $2,500 a month to be able to call someone for a 2-minute phone call. So thank you very much for that.
No problem.
Thank you, Steve. Next item, enrollments. Is there enrollments in our packet?
Yes. I believe so. Martha did it?
None?
No, I'm sorry.
No, once a month.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yep, that's fine. You have a school newsletter from the principal, David Prouty, in your packet. Hearing for visitors. Anyone wish to be heard? Yes, come on down.
Kyle Gibbons, William Casey Road, and member of Spencer Cable Access. A couple points regarding the superintendent search. I'd like to request that it not be before 6 p.m. if possible. I know there was some question of that. I think 6 p.m. is already early for a public meeting, and I don't believe Spencer Cable Access will be able to cover it.
Okay.
If that is the case, and we would like to cover it, we consider that to be very important. The other thing is regarding the visits to the other districts. I am concerned that it could be a public meeting violation, open meeting violation. If there were too many members there at the same time, I could be wrong on that, but I just wanted to bring it up because it wasn't discussed at all during that point.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you.
I would just comment on that second part. If it is that we have a majority, then it would get posted, and that's standard practice on any of the site visits if you have a majority of the committee.
Okay. Mr. Stevens?
You've had a full evening. I won't, go long, but just a few points. First of all, I would just like to express my own, personal thanks to Julie as a, member of the public as well as a member of the select board. She came in at a tough time, gave us all confidence and reassurance, and it was the right person, at the right time. So we'll miss working with you, Julie. I didn't directly work with you, but I know whenever Adam had questions, there was no question we were going to get numbers we could all, rely on, and, responded to numerous requests, so thank you. The other thing is just on the question of the curriculum update, Dr. Malvey, I just wondered about the process and to what extent is that held in public meetings just for people who have questions about the curriculum and coordination between levels as well as its line up with Common Core standards? How does that work in?
The work that the administrators and the staff does on this, it is not a public meeting. It does not have to be a public meeting. It's internal school district operations. But once we get some documents together, we will be rolling it out, certainly to the school committee first, but then publicly for our parents and other interested community members. But the initial work is done during the school day by the staff.
Well, that certainly makes sense. I just know everybody has their anecdotes about, the things they teach in schools these days and stories about Common Core, and it'd be nice to have an opportunity for people to express those and, maybe put some of them to rest and reassure people about what's going on in that level. So that's good to hear. I know the attitude of the school committee is very much one of transparency and openness. And finally, I'm appreciate everybody's response to the MCAS scores. I I think your level of concern in outrage over certain things and in the pride that that the staff has and the candor that they talk about the shortcomings and the way that they're on target. I think it's great to hear. And I would just say that it was the first time I'd made the connection, in all honesty, but between those scores and staffing and budgets. And I think when it comes to presenting the budget to the public in the future, tying responsibilities to MCAS results and the need to supervise closely and to stay on top of those scores, I think would help make the case. We all know what that means in terms of school choice and families moving to our community. So just a thought for the future. It was a little revelation to me. I'm sorry that I haven't made that connection before, but that's the sort of thing I think it needs to come out and quite defensible. When you're talking about justifying positions for and the way they affect the way people see our community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Anyone else that wish to be heard? Any other visitors? Okay, seeing none. Next, school committee comments, future agenda topics. Any members have any? Mr. Nordquist?
Mr. Chairman, I get two questions for you to the superintendent. I asked, I think last month, just asking, not making no attempt to buy nothing, but did you get a chance to check on the state surplus list about a pickup truck, Doctor?
We did, Kurt, and we have no takers right now. Julie can pick it up, but she's been following it very, very closely. And my well, first of all, to our knowledge, there are no current vehicles, pickup trucks available through the state surplus list. My understanding is that there was an auction back in August thereabouts where there were some vehicles, but I'll let Julie comment on it. It was kind of a catch-22. As bad as our vehicles are, this was worse. The highlight was it did have 4 tires. Couldn't verify whether the tires would roll on the road, but I mean, it got to that point that we just didn't have any pickings, so to speak. Julie, can you comment on it, because you really spent a lot of time trying to scratch that surface?
I guess that kind of answers it. So on the actual state surplus list, mostly there was some computer equipment, old cameras, desks, that type of thing, that type of equipment. The vehicles, they did have an auction over the summer. And it looks like the other municipalities in the state do have different auctions running, like on public auction sites. Most of them did say poor condition, can't guarantee run, for scrap. Like, I couldn't find anything that said would go plow snow this winter, which is what we need. So I don't think that's really going to be a feasible path to go down.
Thank you, Julie. Kurt?
I want to say thanks for doing it. At least we're checking. And the second thing is if you have a chance just before you go, Julie, if you could if you can get back to us again about the lights at the school here, if National Grid's going to come in and help us with any kind of lights or something, so we could cut the costs. If you don't have a time, with Dr. Mel, we could look into it and see what we can do about that.
Julie can comment on that too, Kurt. The work is ongoing, and she does have an update.
So the work is still going on. There's been consultants in. I think they came in for a second time this week, doing further analysis on the HVAC system. They've also come and done some analysis on the outside lights. We don't have any proposals yet, but they are still working on it, and eventually they'll get back to us with what the percentage they'll pay and what percentage we would have to pay, and then we can go forward from there. But they are still working on it, and hopefully should have a proposal soon.
I want to say thanks for doing that, Julie.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cludier.
It's only September, but I think what I'd like to propose and see us do is start working on the budget, and start working on the budget soon. I was here when we didn't have a superintendent on board. We didn't have a business manager on board. We had a temporary person filling the void, and I saw the disarray the district was in. Since then, we've hired Dr. Malvey to lead the district as our superintendent. We hired Julie, or the previous board hired Julie, to be the business manager, and it was a great hire. And we've certainly squared away some of the financial problems in the district. I don't want to see us drop into that problem again. I'm not looking to get a year's worth of work done before Julie leaves. I'm not looking to get a year's worth of the work done before Dr. Malvey leaves. But we're looking to replace both of these individuals in the near future. So what I'd like to see us do is start the FY16 budget process early and get a jump on it. So if things don't happen exactly the way we plan them right now and the way we foresee them playing out, that we're ahead on the budget.
To your point, the 2 questions were asked to the potential candidates for the superintendent's job when I spoke to them. One actually called me back after Julie had made it public that she was leaving. And I was asked, how soon are you going to hire a business manager, and how soon are you going to start the budget process, or are we going to come into it in the middle? So I think we're not the only ones thinking about it. People that are looking at us deciding whether they want to come here are thinking about it as well. So I would agree. I think it's imperative that we start sooner than later and get this done while Julie's here, not to put any more pressure on her or on Dr. Malvey, but I think it's going to enhance our position as we go forward through the interview process, and we're probably going to be on interview as much as we're interviewing those folks. It would be advantageous for us to be able to say when asked by those candidates that yes, we're in the process of hiring a business manager, yes, we're in the process of bringing our budget forward for next year, and so I conclude to your point that we certainly do need to get moving on it.
You know, I think that it's a process the budget, it's a lengthy process. I'm not looking to adopt the budget early or anything of that nature. I'm just looking to start that process. I'm looking to start a budget subcommittee. I'm looking so that this board can identify with the superintendent potential positions or areas where we want to increase staffing, where we want to maybe add positions, where we want to boost up the educational value in our district. So I think those types of discussions in a subcommittee format, we should lay that out early.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a lot of need in this district. You don't have to look real hard and look real far to find that need.
Yeah.
You can't conquer it all in one fell swoop, but I think if we start chipping away at it, we're going to be better off in the long run.
Yeah, we had a budget subcommittee a short time ago that was comprised of yourself and Ms. Messier. If we continued with that same budget committee, are you interested, Heather, and you?
Yeah,
Vinnie?
absolutely.
From the chair's standpoint, I would like to expand that if the board was willing, and I would like to be on that committee as well myself. I think if we're going to have a subcommittee with everything that Dr. Malby's got on his plate, and Julie as well, I think we need to do this at a time when we can do this and have staff available in the administration office and do it during the day while they're there, so it doesn't require them having to be here for more night meetings and stuff. And I think we need to be able to adjust whatever schedule they have available as to when it can be done. But does anyone have any objection to that, or is there anyone else that would prefer that they served instead of myself or instead of Mr. Cloutier or Ms. Messier?
I'm assuming that we can still give you feedback.
I'm sorry?
I'm assuming we can give you feedback.
Yeah, this was just strictly preliminary stuff, and we certainly would be taking suggestions from the full board as well as we move along. But everything will be coming back as a recommendation from the superintendent to the board, and we'll have our opportunities to vote then as well. But all members will certainly have the ability to weigh in with either Ms. Messier, Mr. Cloutier, or myself. So no objection. Do you want to make that as a motion, Mr. Cloutier?
I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Cloutier. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Napkin. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Do members have any other suggestions or things they would?
I had one more thing. I'm not sure of the time frame, but before the bottom fell out, probably 2 years ago, we started exploring a wind turbine project, and I think the district actually sank a little over $200,000 into the study, which included the Met Tower and things like that, data collection to see if the site was feasible and worth it. Don't know where that is, don't know if anybody has seen it, but if we could potentially dust that off and just look at it. I know, spending money to make money is an issue, for us, but, certainly these studies that are out there, the districts that have wind turbines and things like that. I know Holy Name, where I graduated from, they recoup between $56,000 and $80,000 a year and get all their power free, just by paying back to the grid. So I think we were in a good spot at one time to look at that, and then the bottom fell out, and we certainly did invest, capital into that. So I think I'd love to see that at least, reviewed by the new members to get them up to speed on it, see if there's any flavor for that moving forward.
I can tell you, Mr. Kane, I looked at that document when I first came on the board, and it was at the point back when it was done, we were looking at somewhere around $1 million to get the project up and running. But to your point, the payback period was around 7 or 8 years, and then we were, up and running after that with a great savings. So I don't know where that report is. I happened to see it collecting dust when I came. I dusted it off and read it.
So I mean, if everybody could get a copy of that, just to relook at it, take a peek. For some people, it'll be a brand new read. For others, it's just looking at it for a second time or third time. But
we may maybe just make it available in the superintendent's office and have a sign on it. It's some close to 200 pages document. So.
You can just read the summary. That
right.
Sums it up.
All right, anybody else have anything?
I just had something quick. The website is very outdated, and I understand that there's not really a lot of time right now to put into making it better, but absolutely we could have the correct principal names on there, because I had a really hard time last week with that. And like messages from principals were from like 2009, some from principals that are no longer with us. I would just like to see those things updated, even if it's to clear the page out. I just think it's a little, I mean, my nephew's 9 and he loves to look at the website, and he's always telling me how bad it is. So I'd just love to see if we could at least update the information that's on there. I understand we don't really have the time to be designing a website right now, but if we could just have up-to-date information, that would be helpful.
Dr. Malvey, whose responsibility does that fall with?
We have several people, but I'll discuss it with Steve to try to farm it out, right?
All right, thank you. Anyone else have anything? If not, the chair needs a motion to go into executive session. We are going to go in for two purposes. The first, to update Unit A negotiations, and the second, to discuss collective bargaining issues in regards to the new superintendent's contract. We will reconvene only for the purposes of adjourning. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cludier, your second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Napkin on a roll call vote. Mr. Ethia?
Aye.
Ms. Messier?
Aye.
Mr. Cludier?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Napton?
Aye.
Mr. Nordquist?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.